Hi there, this is Mark. I've got my Samebike LO26. I'm trying to make the motor run a bit quieter, and I've bought some of this extra heavy duty grease. It says here, resist, slinging out, melting high temperature, squeezing out. Okay, for chassis and wheel bearings. So I'm going to try putting some of this on the planetary gears inside the rear motor. A few points, people are saying how difficult it is to change the rear tyre. Here's the cable that goes to the motor. You can just cut these two tie wraps, and this cable descends down here through a hole, and the controller is mounted behind here. You open the bike up, undo 4 screws, and all the controller will pull out. You can pull the 3 cables that have got the power that go to the motor, and you can pull out the white connector, which has got the Hall effect speed sensor in it. You can pull that through the hole and pull it all up here and just take the wheel off. You don't need to disconnect the connector. So that will come off. Also, if you just loosen these 2 off, take the tyre off here while it's in situ, take the inner tube out, loosen these off, lift it up, and you can just pull the inner tube or the tyre off, just put it back in. It's really straightforward. Also, I'm going to take this off, take those 6 screws out, and you just pull the motor out and you just take the wheel off. You don't need to fit the connector here. I can't really see the point in doing it. It's really quick to do this. So now this is all set up here. I'm going to take that wheel off, take the motor out, and just take the wheel off. Okay. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these 2 tie wraps. Yeah. Then I'm going to loosen that nut here. Then I'm going to loosen the nut over this side. Then I'm going to pull this up, pull the wheel up, just lie it flat across the back of the bike. Then I'm going to undo those 6 screws, pull the gear cassette off. Then I'm going to take the motor out. That at least makes the wheel completely free. You can do whatever you want with it. Okay. So I'm just going to do that right now. I'm going to cut the tyre wraps and then loosen the 2 nuts. This is going to take me about 2 minutes. Okay, that took me less than a minute. Right, loosen this one, take the derailleur guard off, release that nut, release that nut. Okay, cut this tyre up, lift the wheel up. I'll just lift it up now. I have to do that with 2 hands. Pause it, 2 ticks. Right, that took me less than 30 seconds. So I've got the wheel out there now. Now I'm just going to undo the 6 screws around there. Okay, less than a minute. I've taken the 6 screws out. There we go. Now this, it just gets wedged in. You can get underneath one of these and just tap it with like a long screwdriver and a hammer. So, something like this. If I just get underneath this lip here, get underneath there, see there, just tap it very gently with a hammer, and then this releases. I'm pausing it again. Okay, I've just tapped it. So this is now free. Undo the nut all the way. Take the nut off down there. Take this Torx washer all the way down there as well. Then I can take the gear cassette mechanism out. Take that out, which reveals the motor. I did have a fault with the speed on one motor, and I burnt one motor out. I don't know if you saw a previous video going up a steep hill. Gearbest sent me one, but it didn't detect speed. So out the burnt out motor, I'd removed this little module and some sensors and soldered it in here. This works fine now. So right, I've got the motor out. Now if I just lift the motor out now, well, I can't do that because I've got a nut on the other end. You just take the nut off. And the washers. keeping a note of the order. So I can now just lift the motor out. Be careful not to lose the little shims in there. Now you see this wood is completely removed. Here we go. So now I've got the motor off, the wheel off, and there's the motor just sitting there. You can see I've got planetary gears here. I tried using some white lithium grease to try and quieten it down, which didn't work. It was no, so we've got lithium grease in there and so on. So I'm going to try and use this extra heavy duty grease. I'm going to clean that up firstly and then see how I get on. Here we go. Okay, here's the motor then. Tried to clean it. That's as much of the other grease off it as I can get off it. Leave that there. And now I've cleaned out the inside of the wheel where the metal bearing is. And now I'm going to try and apply this stuff to it. Find out what it does. Unfortunately, I think that when gears run with each other, they just make a noise. I have actually built myself this other 1000-watt one, which I bought when my motor burnt out. There is no gearing in this at all, and this is completely silent. 175 quid for the 1000-watt motor, 220 quid for the 13 amp hour battery. Controller fits in there. I put a little plastic box there. This is incredibly powerful, but I can get 25 miles an hour on the electric alone up a hill without a problem. If you spin the wheel freely, it does 50 miles an hour. I've slowed it right down, parameter 8, 16 miles per hour. It's a really nice ride. In fact, I prefer riding this bike. But the same bike is extremely frugal in its power usage, I think. I still like riding this as well. Okay, so I'm now going to grease that up. You can see how easy it is to take the motor out and get access to it. It takes a few minutes. Right, let me just put this back in again now. And here we go. Take this thick grease there. And the load round in there as well. So we get on with it. Right, well, that's back in now. Put the gear cassette, slide that up. Right, motor back on again. So I need to just slot it back into the frame. Manage to make sure you get the washers in the right places. Okay, so this one goes on here, goes on there. This washer has to be facing downwards, and then the nut after that has to be facing, this washer has to be facing down into the slot, so this comes out the bottom. Then I have to put the nuts on the other side. So I'm just going to put the nut on now and I'll show you again when I've done it. Okay, just dropped it down. Got the cable coming out the bottom here. The torque nut there like that. I've got a nut in that side there as well. Just a nut, an inner nut there like that. Okay, so just put the outer nuts on. So here we go. Yeah, the derailleur guard is the sort of the outer nut there, and I've got the other nuts in there. So this wheel's all back together again. You can see I've taken the wheel out. It's just slotted it back into the brakes. See, make sure you keep any grease away from the brake disc, which I did. But you see, alright, okay. So I've now re-greased it. I've re-greased the motor. Spinning fine. Okay. All I got to do is then just tie wrap these cables back on. But I didn't need to cut this to get any of that off. But I don't even need to undo I don't have to take the wheel off or take the motor out in order to change the tyre. You just lever the tyre off, take the inner tube out, you release the 2 nuts, you just lift it up a fraction, you can just take it off and just drop it back down again. So now, proof's in the pudding to see if this is any quieter. If the motor's quieter, now I'll put some thicker grease on it and I'll just tyre up those back on again. So back in a minute. Well, there we go. It probably only took me 10 minutes, take the wheel off, take the motor out, re-grease the motor, put it all back again. Put the cables back, tyre up it back, the motor cable back, and now try this motor out, see how quiet it is.